Welcome to a new Fresh Reads vlog. This vlog is for Theory and Practice, which is a novel by Michelle de Kretser, who is a Australian writer, and this book won the Stella Prize in 2025. I didn't know that when I picked this. This was just one that I picked for a couple reasons, one of which was it was available at my library. Second reason was it references Virginia Woolf, and I am kind of a Bloomsbury nerd, and so I picked this one. I'm already over halfway, so I'll give you a little synopsis of my feelings so far. All right, so this is interesting because Michelle de Kretser is of Sri Lankan descent, Australian. And so her main character in here is also of Sri Lankan descent. This book is very literary. It's got a lot of ideas in it. And I think there are people who don't like reading about art and literature. And if you don't like reading about art and literature, then you may not like this. You can tell by the title that it is very much an intellectual book about ideas, but not just highfalutin philosophical ideas, because to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of books like that. It is a coming of age story. This woman has finished her undergraduate in Sydney and then moves to Melbourne to do her graduate work. It's the mid-1980s. Feminism and gender studies and colonial observations are presented here in a really, for me, advanced way. I wasn't that old in 1986, so I wasn't really at the forefront of understanding where all these theories were in terms of university, especially not in Australia, considering I'm Canadian. But when I was going to university in the late 90s, early 2000s, those ideas seemed very new and fresh to me, and I think to a lot of people who were encountering them. So, the kind of people and the types of people and their Marxism or their, philosophy, intellectual ways of being are represented in here. And I can't really speak to whether that is an particularly accurate representation of the 90s university culture in Melbourne, but I'm happy that it's here for me to read. There's a lot of moral questions that happen in this book. It's told very much vignette style, so there's no chapter breaks. You just get asterisks in between the thoughts. That was a bit confusing at the beginning because the beginning is like a failed attempt at writing a novel. So just to prep you in advance, the beginning few pages don't really relate to the plot of the book as it's described in the blurb, which was a bit confusing for me while I was first reading it. I may actually have to go back and reread that part just to cross-reference it with what has happened in the plot since then. So our young woman arrives in the new city. She establishes herself at the university. She meets people. She encounters lots of different personalities. She begins a relationship with a man who's also in a relationship with another woman after a heartbreak of her own. So it's this, kind of commentary on revenge, on the kind of complexities of trying to be very feminist and advanced. And for her, what that means is not feeling jealousy, not feeling possession of a person, but living in a more free and open style of relationship. Even though she does struggle with that, she has a kind of complicated relationship with her mother, which is told in kind of vignettes that basically are in her mother's voice, the way she would leave a message on her answering machine. There are also examples in here of her own experience of sexual abuse and relating that to Virginia Woolf. So it's interesting because as she's going through her research, she's going to be writing a thesis around Virginia Woolf. She comes across a racist passage that Virginia Woolf wrote, which becomes really problematic for her. And as she's trying to process her feelings around that and her hero worship of Virginia Woolf, she's also looking at her own life, looking at her own reasons for continuing to admire and champion Virginia Woolf in her internally, while also saying, well, maybe I shouldn't be championing her because she was questionably more, like her values were questionable. So it's a really great exploration of that. I know there's been a few nonfiction books over the last couple years that are exploring this idea. I think one might be called Art Monsters. I'm not exactly sure if that's the title, but it's exploring this idea of admiring artists, like can you separate the artist's work from their personality and who they were and the complications around that. So, and then this idea of theory comes in a lot. She questions where theory came from. I think there's an assumption here that theory is very colonial, very patriarchal, very power over system, and then practice, this idea of like executing. So you're like learning these ideas, but then actually putting them into practice and like actually living them can be a really different experience. So it's a really little book. There's a lot of ideas in there. I would say I am enjoying it, but it's not something that I'm head over heels for. I did find in the passages I was reading last night some interesting quotes that I think I will pull on for a Bloomsbury diary, potentially. If you're not familiar with that, my Bloomsbury diaries are videos that I make about books around the Bloomsbury group. And I wasn't sure if this one, being so short, had that kind of level of in-depthness enough for me to pull something for a Bloomsbury diary, but I may do so. And so, yeah, I think that's all I have to say about it right now. I'm hoping to finish this book over the weekend or early next week and get the vlog out to you. I love how how lucky I am to have picked the winner to read off the list. And yeah, it's good to kind of know that in advance and then keep that in mind as I'm going through the book. And yeah, I will check in again with you when I have finished it. Hello everybody. All right, so on the weekend I finished Theory and Practice by Michelle de Kretser, which won the Stella Prize in Australia. So this novel is told vignette style, so you're kind of jumping from thought to thought. You do have a pretty linear narrative once the initial beginning part is over, which is kind of a failed novel. Again, I did think I would maybe reread it, but I don't think I need to now because I think I understand what it was trying to talk about. This novel covers a lot of different topics, colonialism, mother-daughter relationship, the kind of feminist effect on relationships for young people. So thinking about ideas of jealousy, freedom, and fluidity in terms of commitment and things like that. And then it also talks a lot about the idea of theory and like being in a university environment and learning and absorbing different theoretical practices. It also has a lot about gender relations within the system. So there's a lot going on in here, and because it's told in this vignette style, it's kind of hard to hold on to anything. There's also talk about sexual abuse in here and pedophilia. Again, briefly, but relating to the overall flow. So some of the parts read more like nonfiction than other parts, with our main character, whose name is Cindy, I think. But she's kind of unnamed, but then there's one mention of her name. Our character is of Sri Lankan descent, but living in Australia, grew up in Australia. And it's a little bit hard to know her. She's a little bit removed from us. So, I mean, overall, I'm really happy that I read this, but in terms of like something that I could love or champion, I don't really think that it was quite enough for me. I liked a lot of the ideas. I liked a lot of the directions that the author was taking you in, but I just couldn't really hold on to anything because it's a really short book. It's only 175 pages, and you don't get to sink your teeth into very much, other than I would say the main plot, which is this idea of jealousy. There's a quote from another author in here about how when you're in love with someone and it's like a love triangle, you're actually as obsessed with the other person in the couple of the love triangle than you are with the person you're in love with. And so that is a huge part of this as well. And there's quite a large time gap. We encounter Cindy as she's going to her master's degree, but then we encounter her, like we get back, know her again once she's an adult and she's living her life and she's past this other time in her life. So but the things in her adult life are relating back to these people she knew. So again, I enjoyed it. I'm glad I read it, but I don't feel like there's much that I can sink my teeth into, especially even in reviewing this or like talking about it. It's just not, it just didn't have a lot that I didn't have a lot of feelings about it. The Virginia Woolf references were really interesting, and I liked what she was talking about in those. And I think I will make a very quick Bloomsbury Diary video about the Virginia Woolf element of this novel. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can look for my Bloomsbury Diary video whenever I get a chance to put that together. And so I want to thank you for watching this vlog. I have to say it. I don't think that, this wasn't a high, I think I gave it 3 stars. I would like 3.5 stars. It's just, like I said, it didn't have a ton of substance to sink your teeth into, really. And, but overall, it was an enjoyable reading experience. So that is Theory and Practice by Michelle de Kretser, and I want to thank you for joining me for this Fresh Reads vlog. I'm not sure what my next Fresh Read will be, but you will see that in the coming month, and I will be back again soon with another video.